Okay, so I'm not some like alpha male, jacked, steroid-ridden, masculine, like toxic dude or anything. I'm just not. But I am someone who's been on self-improvement now for like 4 years nearly, and trying to chase the best version of myself. And I've got a lot of experience from past mistakes that were made when I was an immature little boy, and I've learned a lot of lessons since then, and I just want to teach you about them today because I think they're super important. And I still see a lot of guys who are my age, and I'm 22 now, who still kind of act like this and have a lot of these traits. And a lot of my friends and people I know have traits that are like this that you probably shouldn't have. So I'm going to go through them with you now. And the trait at the end that I'm going to talk to you about is something that not a lot of people talk about, and I think it's probably by far the most important trait of masculine men. Okay, so the first trait is emotional control. Now, about 3.5 years ago, when I just first started at the company that I'm working at now, we all went out for some drinks, and I'd only been working there for like 2 months. And, you know, we all got pretty drunk. We were all like drinking alcohol all night. It was very late. And we went to this bar in the city that I live in, and we're all there with all these new work people that I only have recently like got friends with. I've only known them for a couple months. And I got stupidly drunk, right? And this is the most drunk I think I've actually ever been in my life. And I got so drunk that there was a waitress who came round, and she was like, I can't even remember what happened. I was that pissed, I don't remember what happened. But I remember vaguely like shouting at her and like being quite aggressive because I think I was asking for some water or something like that. And I remember my manager at the time just like was like, what the fuck, shouted at me and this shit. And I basically just embarrassed myself, right? And I've got shit for it ever since. And it's kind of just a moment for me where I think back at it like, what the fuck? How was I not able to like control my emotions? I know I was drunk, but I've been drunk since and been able to control my emotions. And there's some people I know who are quite emotional. And I think it's something that I just have worked on since that one encounter, to be honest. Just like when something rubs me the wrong way, or when something affects me, when I'm like talking to my friends and I'm like, what the fuck, you know, it's like a bit annoying, or something that happens at work and someone maybe just says something that's a bit like, what, do you know what I mean? And you get like a bit angry and a bit like defensive and standoffish. Just kind of like acknowledging that and like suppressing it. I think being able to just not have these like emotional outbursts where you just like embarrass yourself and like get angry at people over like little things, and just not being like super emotional. Not like don't be emotional in terms of like letting out your feelings, right? Like it's totally fine to open up and talk to people, like be honest about like how you're feeling, like if you're sad or anything like that. I think this is more specifically like anger and like not thinking about things before you lash out and get angry. So this is something that I've been working on over like since just being a like young teenager full of testosterone and just like horny as fuck, just getting angry, to just like now I'm like a little bit more chilled out. Like if someone says something that just rubs me the wrong way, I'll just like think on it and maybe I'll just bring them up on it later on or something like that, but I'll never like just stop them right there and then it just causes a scene or anything like that. It's just like not the right thing to do. Trait number 2 is the willingness to have difficult, hard conversations, right? I know a lot of guys who do not have the capability of having a difficult conversation with someone that they know they need to have. And the perfect example of this is when you have to go through a breakup, or you want to break up with someone. It's super difficult, and you'll be thinking about it for weeks and weeks beforehand, because it's not like a split decision like that. It's something that like, you just think about, right? And I remember when I broke up with my most recent girlfriend, it was super difficult decision, and I was just thinking about it for months. And you know, I was having sleepless nights over it, and it wasn't good. And I kept putting off that conversation, right? I kept thinking, oh, I'll do it after, you know, I finish work, or I'll do it after like, you know, this thing happens or whatever. You start to like think of like various things that need to happen first before you have this conversation, don't you? Like this is probably what you're doing with something right now, either your girlfriend or maybe like your manager. Maybe you need to speak to them like, you know, I'm not happy at work or something like that. And you're just putting off that conversation because you know it's going to be awkward, right? You know that it's going to be really sad. You might both cry. You might, you know, it's going to be horrible. But that ability to just think, fuck it, and just have the conversation and confront that, even though it's going to be difficult. I've found in my life that having those conversations has always led to me being happier afterwards. And that's not a reflection on the person I was with or like whatever was happening before. It's just that a lot of things in life that you want come after having a difficult conversation that you're putting off right now. Okay, trait number 3 is admittance to your own flaws and your own shortcomings. And for me, this is something that I'm actually pretty good at. And I used to be pretty bad at this. I used to lie a lot, right? So I used to constantly lie about random shit like my body count, right? I used to lie to people I didn't know about like my body count when I've been like a social situation, because I thought I'd be like cooler if like I'd like shagged 2 more people than like I actually had done, right? Which is so silly. And I would always like just inflate that number by like 1 or 2 for no reason. And I used to do this when I was like 16, 17, and just looking back at it, it's like, what the fuck? Just be honest, right? And like be honest about your shortcomings and your flaws. And this is something that I'm pretty good at. I can just speak to my friends. Like, you know, a few weeks ago we all went out drinking, got really drunk, even though like I'd not been drinking for ages. So I like totally quit alcohol, went sober for ages, and then I slowly started introducing alcohol back in again, just for like social events and things like that. And then like I went out, got absolutely pissed. And I was just like literally speaking to my friend the next day, because I stayed over at his house, and I was speaking to the next day like, mate, I'm not gonna lie, I feel crap right now physically from the alcohol, but I also feel a bit shit. Like, you know, I'm running the self-improvement channel. I'm like supposed to be like, you know, being honest and like, you know, saying don't drink alcohol, don't do this stuff. And I've just like done it, right? And I was just honest with him about that. I'll be honest with you about that as well. And I felt bad about it, and just admitting that and talking to someone about that and being like open and like vulnerable to just be like, listen mate, I fucked up and I just like feel a bit shit about it, right? And just being honest about like your own mistakes, your own flaws, that's just like a very mature like trait that a lot of men have and a lot of boys don't. Like when I was a boy, if I did something wrong, I would just divert it, like it's not my problem, or blame it on someone else, or just lie blatantly that I didn't do it or whatever. And there's no point. I've just found over the years, just be honest, be truthful about what you've done, and admit to your own flaws, and then more importantly, actually try and do something about it. Okay, so the 4th trait of most men is the ability to take a bit of shit, right? So this is a bit of an obscure one, but I know a lot of people who are my age who cannot take a fucking joke, right? So you can be out in a situation with your friendship group, you might have experienced this, and you're all having a few drinks, you're at the pub, and you know, all the friends, there's this like great like lads dynamic, and I love this, where like each person will have something like either physically or like appearance wise like that's like wrong or unattractive or something, right? So you've got like the fat friend, you've got the guy who's got like the big nose, you've got the guy who's got like a shit haircut, you've got the guy who's like autistic or whatever, and then you've got me who's like small or something, right? Like whatever. You have all these like little things that like lads will point out, right? And that's like a good like funny thing. Like it's just funny. Like a lot of what like binds guys together is just having a good laugh and just like taking the piss out of each other. Like that's a great thing. It's not a negative thing. It's not toxic. It's not any of this. It's just like open, honest banter, right? And I know some people who really can't take that. Like they can't take having anything like that said about them, even though it's just a joke. And I just think that's really immature, and like they often lash out, right? And I think it's super important if you want to be like tough and resilient just in the world in general, to be able to take a bit of shit, right? It's for someone to say like, mate, you're a bit fat. Like, you know, if my friend came up to me, if I'd put on a bit of weight, I kind of want my friends to come up to me and be like, Joe, you're kind of fat, like as a joke, but then I can be like, oh yeah, I'll laugh it off, and then like secretly be like, fuck. And then I could actually go and change it, right? Because if you don't have any of that, and you just have like yes men around you who are like, oh, you know, you're amazing, and you know, oh, you're in great shape and all this stuff, when you're just not, like, how is it going to help you? So you need to be that friend to your friends, right? You need to be honest with them and just be like, mate, you fucking fat. And then hopefully they'll actually go do something about it. And that's what I've found, right? I've found from when I give my mates a bit of shit about stuff like that, like they actually go and lose the weight. Like, so it actually works. And you could say, oh, well, it's just bullying and it's just horrible. Like, no, this is like, you need to be able to take a bit of shit, right? This is all about like what men do. They give each other shit and they take shit off of each other. And that's what like bonds men together. A lot of the times that's like how you bond as a guy. Okay, and the last trait is the most important one. And this is something called self-actualization. And what this means is basically trying to fulfill your life with purpose, right? And trying to become the best version of yourself. And the way I like to think about it is everything that you do needs to orient you into one direction, and that is improving yourself as a person and finding purpose and finding fulfillment. It's basically the opposite of plodding through life doing fuck all, right? Self-actualization is the kind of mental acknowledgement that you are going to aim to be the best version of yourself possible. Because a lot of men, or boys should I say, don't actually do this. Like they don't actually have a direction or a target, and they don't actually aim to become or do anything in particular. They're quite happy just living at home, going to work, spending time with a girlfriend, playing a bit of video games, watching the latest Netflix series, maybe having a wank later on at night and just kind of repeating that throughout the week, and then meeting up with the boys on a Friday, getting pissed, and that's like their week, right? And they just do that, and that's their life. There's nothing to orient them. Do you know what I mean? You need to be oriented into a certain direction. Like for me, I used to be like this, by the way. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I used to be like this, and slowly through the process of self-improvement, I've managed to orient myself to aim for something. And that for me is financial freedom, retiring my family, building a business, a brand. This is what I'm doing here, building a business and a brand that can sustain me into the future. I want to explore the world. I want to build a great body. I want to be healthy. I want to live a long time. And then ultimately I want to make my own family, right? That's my kind of goal. And I'm orienting myself in that direction. And I think about that like, shit, so what can I do on a day-to-day basis that's going to just help me inch a little bit closer to that? And that for me is working on making YouTube videos. It's going to the gym. It's going for walks. It's getting outside into nature to make sure that I'm like feeling mentally good and stuff like that. Like everything I do, I try. I'm not perfect, but I try and self-actualize it into the direction that I want to go to. And I think that pursuit of a goal, that pursuit of freedom is like the ultimate masculine trait, right? There was like a study done that I read on I listened to on a podcast, on a Chris Williamson podcast, and it was a study on like what women find most attractive in men. And the number one thing that was most attractive is basically a man who is aiming towards a goal and having fun whilst they get there. That's the two most attractive things apparently to women that a study found. And I think that's probably right. Like if a girl meets you and you have like a clear defined goal in mind of where you want to get to, you're like driven, you're ambitious, and you're just having a bit of fun whilst you're getting there, then that's like, come on man, that's amazing. That's like perfect, like masculinity is an example. And I just think having that kind of orienting goal and self-actualizing is the most important trait that you need to have if you don't already. And if you don't already have it, a really good place to start is improving yourself, right? Actualizing yourself towards the best version of yourself possible, and then stacking things on top of that, like a business or traveling the world, or finding meaning in your life and things like that, right? It's like kind of philosophical and abstract, but you just need something that orients you. You just need a direction to go in. Right, bro, thank you for watching that video. Hope you got some value out of that. And yeah, keep improving yourself every day. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.